So everybody in this room uses storytelling on a day-to-day basis. And so it's really kind of upscaled how we tell our story internally to our employees, but externally to customers as well. We just recently rolled out the new Glassdoor. It's the app experience. If you haven't downloaded it, I encourage you to. We were in the internal room earlier, and the gentleman was talking about Reddit. So what we've done is we've almost taken kind of like a Reddit-like component, and we've merged it with our Glassdoor.com experience, which is the jobs, the reviews, the insights that people come to us for. But we've also started to kind of build out this community element. So when we were doing pitching, in July when we were getting ready to roll it out, it was amazing from the response that we got from press and different media outlets about having this sizzle reel that basically highlighted and captured all of the new things that were happening within the app experience. And we didn't have to send them a press kit. We didn't have to do too much of anything. The sizzle reel answered all their questions. It was easy for them to embed in the platforms if they wanted to kind of explain what the experience was going to be without needing too much written communications from us. And so we use video in a lot of different ways, but more so just from an engagement perspective to kind of touch people wherever they are.
Absolutely, thank you. Can you give us, I know you just kind of gave a really great example, but can you give another example of maybe a fun way that you use video to engage your colleagues?
Yeah, so we talked about storytelling. We are still very focused on DE&I in our organization, and we had ERGs that we established, employee resource groups, about 2.5 years ago. And so one of the things that we've done with those employee resource groups is during our monthly town halls, if there is an awareness or a recognition month that's happening, we allow those employee resource groups to kind of pull together videos that highlight whatever the month is. So most recently in October, our EMEA team were celebrating UK Black History Month. And so we had them talk about with female changemakers, which was the theme of who has impacted, inspired them. And we played it during a town hall, and what we find is that from an engagement perspective internally with our employees, those are the pieces of content that get the most engagement and the most reactions. Externally, everyone loves to find out about a culture of a company before they apply or before they start to earmark the organizations that they want to join. What we find is that when we let our employees tell the story of what their experience is like at Glassdoor, those are also the ones that resonate the most with our users. From a client perspective, we have employers who are looking for tricks and different ways that they can get engagement out of their employees. And as the employer branding specialist, that's kind of how we are positioned in the market. It's very helpful for us to be the test case for that, so we can share with employers how it's working for us, both internally and externally.
Absolutely. And perhaps for the audience, what lessons do you think, especially in that experience, that others can learn when it comes to kind of trying to engage your audience in that way?
Yeah, I think that the strategy is really simple. Listen. It's like your customers tell you what their needs are, your employees tell you what their needs are. Being able to really listen and figure out ways to speak to those concerns or those challenges or those issues, I think for anybody makes your job that much easier. And so, for us, one of the challenges that we've heard consistently from our employees is that, there's a lack of, they felt like there was a lack of recognition internally within our teams. And so it's one of those things where to have our CEO on a Friday hop on and drop a video really quick, just telling everybody how proud he is of the work that we've done, or just encouraging them as we head into a long weekend about coming back rested and rejuvenated and ready to go the following day. Like, those are the things that we've been able to kind of work into how we strategize going forward. And so again, with the new Glassdoor launch, video was a very key aspect of that strategy, both internally and externally, when we were telling the story of why we were making this change at this moment in time.
Absolutely. And yeah, I guess staying on the topic of advice, I think video can feel intimidating with PlayPlay. It's not. But what are some strategies that you can recommend to harness video and create a real plan moving forward? So it's not just when a video comes up, you're completing it, but to try to build it into everything that you do.
Yeah, so just by a show of hands, how many people in here are working with a really small team? pretty much everybody, right? And so I think from a communications perspective, one of our biggest challenges is always going to be time. Who's going to do it? We don't have the time. We're already stretched thin. We're running with really, really, really lean and small teams. And you're looking at your leaders like, we can't do it alone. And for me, one of the issues early on was like, well, you can't get headcount because we need to understand the ROI first, right? So it's just like, we can't give you headcount until we understand the ROI. So it's like, well, I need data. Well, you can only get so much data from surveys. You can only get so much data from, clicks and click-throughs and all of these different things. And so for us, what it was is like, how can we find quick, easy ways to get the work done that we need to get done, and then report back out the data once we have it. And so looking at different tools and softwares that could kind of help streamline and make our jobs a little bit easier was number one. And so to that point about PlayPlay, we knew we needed to do video, but who's gonna do video? Like, we don't have any editors outside of the brand and design team available to us, and with them, it's like, you've got to submit a ticket, and then it might be 2 weeks before they come back, and it's like, oh, you didn't give me long enough SLA, like, oh, we don't have people. So for, our strategy is kind of like, well, part of the effectiveness was gonna be how quickly we could turn around some of these different pieces that we needed to execute. And so having a tool like PlayPlay, where I was telling them backstage, at this point, a 9-year-old could use this software. It is that easy. There's graphics, there's music, there's all these different great things that you can use to make an engaging video. And once we started making the videos, I'd probably spend, once we've recorded the content, I might spend 20 minutes actually editing a video. And when we would share them out, that's how we would start to get the metrics that we needed to make the argument for that dedicated headcount. So it's like, I know a lot of times when you're already running lean, there's not a commitment for more resources, there's no funding available, you have to get creative. And so for us, we took the small budget that we had and we invested in the tools that we know were gonna help generate data for us down the road.
And you brought up ROI and data and metrics. What metrics are you tracking when it comes to putting out video content?
Yeah, so for social, obviously you're gonna get the analytics from Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn and some of those other social channels, but internally it was harder to track because outside of, we use Staffbase as our email tool internally. What I will say about Staffbase, and this might be off topic really quickly, but we use Staffbase to send out communications from our leaders so that we could show them the open rates. Because nobody in the C-suite wants to know that people are not reading their communications. And so we would track their emails and we would share that with them. And so once we're looking to start embedding video into those same emails so that we can track those same open rates, so that we have, again, more data to show them. But from an ROI perspective, again, you're sometimes just gonna have to figure out the nitty-gritty ways to get the data that you need to then go back and tell the story. But I think for most leaders, as long as they know that you're being intentional about wanting data and that you are working towards trying to get the data that you need to tell that story, they're more apt to want to kind of work with you in terms of the resourcing and maybe the budgeting.
Absolutely. And I think the last question before we open it up to any questions, what are some best practices for ensuring a seamless and consistent source of distribution? So I'm sure it will depend for every organization, but...
Yeah, it's different for everyone, right? But it's just like everyone in here at some point in time, I'm sure, has figured out a channel strategy. Like, what are the channels we're using? What's the timing of it? You're having to, identify cadence. What's the best time? Is it 9 p.m. at night? Is it 6 a.m. in the morning? So we've all done that. I think for us, it's more of trying to make sure that it's blended content from a strategy perspective. Like, video is great, but if you ditch email in lieu of just sending out videos, you're gonna over-index on that one thing. And so it's really just trying to identify your organization, how people consume information, how your customers consume information, and then meeting them halfway. Because again, it's like we can't do all video, we can't do all written content. We have a corporate blog, and one of my content coworkers is here, and they're in the process of trying to upscale the blog to incorporate video and some of those more engaging pieces of content. So I would say that you know your organization better than anyone. If nothing else, just make sure that it's integrated and that you blend it as much as possible and that you don't over-index in any one area.
Thank you so much. I think we can open it up for any questions for Panana.
Hi, way over here. So I have executives that they're totally on board with doing videos, but when I get them on video, they can be a little over-rehearsed. They need almost to have cue cards sometimes. So I'm just wondering, what are some strategies for not over-preparing the message, but allowing them to still come through as like authentic and get some of the personality? Personality is the hardest thing for me to get across on video.
Yeah, so that's a great question, and I would be lying if I didn't say that we have some of those within our C-suite. I think for us, the important thing up front when we were starting to do video was understanding why there was a level of uncomfort for them being in front of the camera, and so we would start out small by asking them to talk about things that we knew they were super in tune to. So the things that they knew so much about, like let them talk about those things first, record them, let them watch it back, and then you can start to gradually kind of, infuse some of the things that you need them to talk about. But I think that if you're not a natural in front of, an audience, or you kind of get that stage fright, or if you have a leader that's not comfortable in those positions, you have to make it comfortable for them by giving them the opportunity to talk about things that do make them feel comfortable, catching those things first, and then maybe starting to move them slowly into some of those tougher communications. I know for us, our CEO, he felt like it was intimidating for one of us to be on the other end recording him. So he's more comfortable just taking his iPhone, walking through his neighborhood and recording his message, sending it in if we need to edit it, and then we post it from there. So it's, again, just finding out what their level of comfort is, but if nothing else, let them talk about something that they really enjoy and that they're really passionate about so that they can see what it's like, and I think they'll start to kind of ease into it. You don't realize how bright these lights are until you've got them.
No, absolutely. Can't see anything, really.
Hello, thank you. You mentioned data and metrics early on. Could you maybe share some insights or some ways you optimized your video program based on insights and metrics that maybe aren't the obvious ones?
Yep, so we have, I was talking about our transformation earlier this year. We acquired Fishbowl. I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with Fishbowl, but we acquired Fishbowl a couple of years ago. And so one of the things that we've done is like, we use G Drive as for a lot of our, that's where a lot of our content is housed. And so, yeah, you can pull metrics off of there, like who's opened it, who's viewed it, but that's not really a lot of information. And so we've leaned heavily on surveys, right, for some of that content. So it's like if, our CEO posts something on a Friday, immediately, we're in one of the Slack channels or on Fishbowl saying like, hey, here's a poll. How did you find that video? Was there anything that was engaging about it? And then asking them for feedback. And we found that they're more apt to chime in if you ask them immediately after it drops. And so we use a lot of survey data right now because we don't necessarily have all of the back end tools to pull analytics. One of the things that PlayPlay is going to be doing in the upcoming quarters is that they have landing pages, which will now track how many views we get, so we can also pull that data to help kind of tell that story. So, a lot of it is the tooling that we use. We don't have a lot of stuff that's really going to give us back-end data outside of Staffbase, which is our email system. So everything else, we're needing IT to pull, like, hey, can you go in there and look at this? And pooling it, but we are very data-driven as a company, and so it's just one of those things where, especially from an internal communications perspective, it's really hard to use metrics to kind of paint that story of ROI for your leaders, because it's like they can't see sentiment necessarily, and so unless you're asking through a survey. And so a lot of it, again, is just still trying to find the best way to tell the story of how we're performing, but using what we have and then just trying to build on that analytics and the reporting from there, if that makes sense.
Anyone else?
So much. Hi, quick question. Great presentation, by the way. Do you guys find it important to diversify the on-screen, on-video talent? We have some senior leaders who do video, but also we've thought maybe someone from HR, from marketing, dependent on the content, or how do you guys see that diversifying who's actually on camera?
Yeah, so it's functional for us right now. So like our go-to-market team, which is our sales organization, they probably do it the best. And so they have everything from sales leads to, the product management team will come in if they're talking about employer, branded stuff. So they have a slew of people that come in and do videos from them for the time to time. It's not just the head of go-to-market. And so they do it really well in terms of getting frontline employees too, like the people who are actually out there selling. They do like a best practices segment where they ask all of the top sales folks in the organization, like what are some of the things that are working with you as you're going into renewals and how are you approaching it? And so from that perspective, from a level perspective, yes, we diversify, but also from just a people perspective, we try to diversify, which is why, again, our employee resource groups, they get that time at the beginning of all of our town halls to really kind of focus on the work that they're doing. And then, again, we do a lot of external stuff that's when we're external facing, we try to mix up and make sure that we're representing not just our culture internally and not just the makeup of our team internally, but also what we're trying to attract from prospective employers or employees.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I think that's time. Thank you all for attending.